My name is Sharon Burton, and I'm serving as the hostess with the mostest, and will be interviewing Dr. Wilson tonight about the book. And I'm very happy to be here with her. As I've been sharing with those that have already joined, please type in your name in the chat and tell us where you're from and how you know Dr. Sandra Wilson. A few housekeeping notices before we get started. Um, we are recording this presentation for playback for those that have not were not able to view this or may have to leave early. Um, so we are asking and having everyone muted for the entire presentation to make sure we don't get any stray noises or conversations or anything like that. So um, it can be an enjoyable experience for all that are participating. Um, the second thing is we will be taking questions at the end of the interview, and you can type your question in the chat. We have a moderator with us, Sherry Burton Steine will be moderating the questions for us. So if you could, hold your questions until at the end of our interview, that would be great for us to review that information and ask Dr. Wilson um, the questions that you may have. Due to time, we may not get to everyone's question. Matter of fact, I know we won't, but we'll try to get to at least three questions. Um, we appreciate your cooperation with these guidelines, and this will ensure a good experience for Dr. Wilson and everyone in attendance. All right, so now I get the pleasure of introducing our author and featured uh, guest for tonight, and also we'll share a little bit about the book, Unveiled Voices. But first, about the author. Dr. Sandra Walton Wilson grew up in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. She taught in the elementary schools of Abington, Pennsylvania, and Endicott, New York, Montgomery Community College in Pennsylvania, and Temple University in Pennsylvania. She supervised teachers in the reduced class size balanced literacy program and was a teacher editor for a Silver Burdett Gens science program. Sandra earned a Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education from the Great Cheney University in Pennsylvania, a Master of Arts in Urban Education from Montclair University in New Jersey, and a Master of Arts in Humanities with a concentration in Fine Arts at Arcadia University, and a PhD in Urban Education at Temple University. As a deacon at the Bethlehem Baptist Church and chapter and national president of the Black Women's Educational Alliance, Incorporated, NAACP Youth Director, chapter officers in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in the Phi Beta Omega and Psi Epsilon Omega chapters, the Links in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and the National Association of University Women in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and a board member of the Settlement School of Music in Pennsylvania. She was involved very much in her community. Her paintings and art has been displayed in numerous shows, such as the Women's Caucus for Art, Washington, D.C. chapter, Bowie City Hall in Bowie, Maryland, and the African American Museum of Philadelphia, to name a few. Her writings appear in anthologies such as the HBCU Experience, the book, and journals, and her play, We Are, was included in the first International Journal of Black Drama at Temple University. Sandra feels that her most important gift has been mothering her two children and watching them as they nurture her grandchildren. So, Dr. Sandra Wilson. And let me, before we get started, I want to share a little bit about the book for those that may be unfamiliar with it. Unveiled Voices bursts with historical fiction, explores the narratives of silenced personalities, stories often hidden by privacy or societal norms. Told in the spirit of a griot, this collection blends historical, fantastical, and informational moments, offering episodes that delve into struggles, successes, sorrows, and joy. From settling in a new land to encountering meaningful figures, each tale is a puzzle piece inviting readers to complete the picture. So, um, the book has already received some glowing reviews. I will share two of them. Casey Finn of Reader's Favorites states, I particularly admired how Wilson navigates between light and shadow, finding moments of unexpected humor in serious situations while treating difficult subjects with appropriate weight and consideration. The vibrant cast of characters reflect a deep understanding of human diversity and all of its complexity, bringing out fresh perspectives to universal themes. The author's innovative approach to weaving historical elements with fantasy creates a unique read that challenges conventional storytelling norms. And the second one, Erica Meyerhofer of Independent Book Review states, some of the stories in Unveiled Voices stir up some uneasy feelings, but Wilson is skilled at elevating the overlooked experiences of humanity's resilience. There is a visible tug of war going on in the book between its compelling stories and the facts that inspire them. Some stories have context added as notes right after a story, while others provide information in its appendices. The titles of the stories and poems can take on a more academic tone than the rest of the book, too. So it keeps us questioning what Wilson knows. That's my favorite review, actually. All right. So, Dr. Wilson, Sandra,
Okay.
welcome. How are you tonight?
I'm excited, actually.
I'm excited too. So
Yeah.
let's get started with the question, shall we?
Sure.
Was writing a book a long-term goal of yours?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It
Sure.
never, it never, it never dawned on me to write a book. I mean, even when you look at the book itself, when you look at the table of contents, you'll see that I've broken it down into different categories because that's the way my mind works. I'm one of those people that I always considered myself a jack of all trades and a master of none. So for me to write a book, it's kind of like it's just interesting. It's not a goal that I had. The way that it all happened, it was really strange in the first place. I had my husband died in 2020. 20, no, he 2000 in 2000 he passed away. It was 20 almost 25 years ago. And when he did, it threw me into a world of widowhood, right? So to compensate for that, I started writing a book on widowhood. What it's like to be a widow. Now, who wants to read that? Nobody wants to read that. So, and it got to be fun, literally, once I started dating again, right? So my daughter put me on a dating service, and I could compare the dating on the computer to the dating in reality, and that made it fun. So I started writing about it, and it took the book into a different phase. But then I immediately took that book and I put it to the side. I have never thought of myself as an author. I had written some stories, a play, which was published in the International Journal of Black Drama, and it was always very interesting how that happened. But nobody wants to read about how things are sad. They want to read about how things are positive or how things can change. And so when I decided to write these stories, I wanted to, as an artist, I wanted to draw pictures with words. And so each character that's in this particular book is really a painting for me, a painting of the soul. Because I think of myself as um, a griot, and that's spelled Griot, and also Grio. I was amazed years ago when I started to learn about the griots in Africa, how they would go from tribe to tribe, and they were so important that the tribal drummers would would send a message through their drumming to the next village to let them know that this guy was coming, and it usually was a man. It was a man that he was coming. And the important thing about it is that he knew the history of the different tribes. He knew the history of the land. He knew the history of the people. And he was a storyteller. So they were excited. This was their entertainment. This was their theater. It's very similar to Shakespeare and the bards in England. Only there's all of their information was written down. Where the griot, he had to be really intelligent to keep that information in here. And so I proudly think of myself as a griot,
Love it. Love it. Love
trying
it.
to keep all the information in here and then bringing it out. Yes. I saw a T-shirt last week. It said, "I am a writer, and anything you say or do may be used in a story."
That is true.
And I
That-
love that. I think it was Steve Harvey that once said that comedians are very intelligent people. They really are. And he said it's almost like they have a third eye right here, and they see things in a different way. And I feel that way about writing, that you can look at it like everybody else looks at it, but then you have to look at it in a different way. In the book, the very first thing that I have in here, because I have quotes from different writers, it says the one thing you have that nobody else has is your voice, your mind, your story, your vision. So write and draw and build and play and dance and live as only you can. And I think that that is a way of saying something to each person, that you are important and you are, with the way things that go along in society today, sometimes people do not realize what a treasure they are. They're so busy looking at what else is going on around them that they don't see what a treasure they are. And so my characters are treasures to me. And I hope that as you go through and you read each one, that you become a part of that. You become a part of that character, that you can see things from that person's point of view.
mhm.
One of the things that I say at I write a letter to the readers initially. Usually people, they buy the book. Sometimes they don't read books, but they won't read the beginning of it. They'll start at the first part of it. But one of the things, the last paragraph I have in this letter that I write to you, and it is to you: get to know each character. They pay attention to the manners, social conditions, and elements of different eras. Each piece is designed for exploration, for a better understanding of how individuals might respond in different environments. Hopefully, getting to know them will cause you to feel and to come away with a new concept about life. And so basically, no, it was not a long time term goal for me to write a book. It all happened because of circumstances. I moved down here to Maryland. I was told by my accountant I shouldn't move there because they were going to tax my Social Security. So I moved here because my kids were here. And once I got down here, Oh, and I was also told that it's hard to find friends when you move to Maryland because people are very cliquish. I didn't have that problem because I belonged to two big organizations, and then I joined the senior citizens group and started taking classes, and a whole new world opened up for me, and that's when the writing really began to come about. I realized that I'm a storyteller. I know that. Sometimes I overdo it. I was in the hospital last month and ended up talking to people about this book, and they would come and get chairs and come and sit around and sit and listen and talk to me. It was amazing to me. The doctors were talking about it, and one doctor said, "Well, I want to get this book for my girlfriend, for a Christmas present," and another one said, "I'm going." It was amazing. All you have to do, people just want to sometimes talk to you. Sometimes if you just take some time in their busy schedule, they'll make time for you. And I realized that talking to people, my father was one of those people that would walk up to someone and talk to him, that he had no idea who the person was, but he had that kind of that personality. So anyway, moving here to Maryland opened my eyes up to a different world. I had lived mostly in Pennsylvania and in New York. So moving to Maryland was a different environment, and it's something that I'm really glad that I did.
Well, I'm glad that you did too. Um, my second question is, why did you decide to write this book? And um, what do you believe it's about from your point of view? And you did read a little bit from the intro, but if you wanted to add anything, but particularly, why did you choose to write this book?
It was really strange. I signed up for a class at the O'Malley Senior Citizens Center, and it was line dancing, because I love to dance.
Yeah.
And so line dancing is something I had taken uh, classes. So they had a class in line dancing, so I signed up for it. And then I said, well, I painted pictures. I had a painting that was in the Afro American Museum in Philadelphia. So that was before I got into academia. So I said, oh, I'll take a course in painting, painting workshop. And I got into those two courses, and I was surprised. People underestimate senior citizens. They assume these are little old ladies, little old men, and they're just making it. These people are. There are some amazing people in those senior citizen centers. Trust me on this one. The one woman in the class, she she taught at Gallaudet, which is a school for the deaf, and she and some of other her people that she worked with wrote a documentary, and it was up for some kind of an award. I don't know what it was, but it was for an important award. There was another man that was in the class who was retired. He was a retired reporter for C-SPAN. Then there was another guy who had published 5 books. These people, um, and some of them come in as beginning writers. Not all of them come in as established writers, but the interaction that you receive between the people who are there is exemplary. They encourage. Uh, if they encounter there's a problem, they know how to talk to it. They know what to say to you, and so I got so much encouragement that I began to think, well, maybe you can write a little bit. Maybe you might want to put a little story down to say something. And so each time I would write, we would keep, the way that Susan does it is you keep like a log of all of the things that you're writing. And so that was encouraging to me to write something like that. For instance, um, before I moved down here, I went to uh, a, uh, an art store where people are very artistic. They're very into the arts, right? And they had a night where you could sign up to do some of your work. You could present. So I'm going down there. Everybody's in their little funky outfits and everything. I go down there looking like Miss College. And so people, when my turn came up, people started to go like, "Oh, yeah, okay, well, all right." And so I got up and I started dancing. No music, nothing. I have the nerve of Job. I got up and I started doing this dance. By the third time around, they realized I was doing the electric slide. Somebody yelled, "It's electric!" And they all started right. So um, the thing that is important about that to me is that it wasn't just I was doing the electric slide. There's a psychology that I see in the dance, the electric slide. The electric slide is a urban line dance, and it was the one that came out that was more very popular. And I think the other ones started to come after that. Well, this is what I said about the electric slide. You can do it. It's electric. Every woman in the place had a smile upon her face, and as I checked the room, they looked like roses in bloom. Some were up and some were down. Drinks and food were all around, and all the women in the place knew they had no time to waste. No need waiting for a chance for someone to come to request a dance. Once they heard that line dance beat, it was time to get up on their feet. Rhythmic hips swayed to the sounds. Men watched, some joined the rounds. Skirts swished this way and that. Fingers snapped and feet would pat. It was finally time to partay, playing cards and eating hearty. Claps echoed melodic sounds, dancing queens donning Salem crowns. Every woman in the place had a smile upon her face. The spirit of the dance is a freeing spirit in each ear. It forces a warmth of togetherness that is easy to hear. So if you watch the dancers when the song is through, you can see that a positive message remains there too. Now, see, when you listen to that, I didn't read the whole thing to you, but there's a psychology that goes on with the electric slide. There are a number of women who want to go to these dances, but they never get a chance to dance. Either if you're there with your husband or your mate of you have a man that will dance with you. Then you have all these other guys that are standing around in the room doing nothing, just watching. But if you have a line dance and you put it on, you'll see people run to the floor. And when the dance is over, then everybody feels that they had a good time. So there's a psychology to some of the things that we don't pay attention to. And that comes with this third eye that sees something totally different. So, yeah, moved to Maryland, started taking these courses, got in with all these older people who were substantial in my life, and they started me with, "I like that story. You
Mm,
should put it in a book."
okay. All right. Now, what writers, you've been writing for just about, well, all your life, poems, and now you're a published author, and you've been involved with anthologies, have worked and published in anthologies. What writers, authors, playwrights, and poets have inspired you?
Well, my mother was an interesting person, and she she all of a sudden she would do something like this. "Lies, lies, bless the Lord. Don't you know the day I'm broad? If you don't get up, you scared there be trouble in this camp. Lies, you hear me when I call." And she would just all of a sudden burst out with something like that from. Paul Laurence Dunbar book In the Morning. It was a story that was written um, after slavery was over, and people were, beginning to find jobs and take care of themselves, and uh, and so she might do that. And then another thing that she would do is she would say, um, well, when I did this thing with this uh, In the Morning, one of the writings in my book draws from that vernacular that Paul Laurence Dunbar had. Um, my mother was in a play called the Slabtown Convention, and it's slapstick. So some people didn't see the. It was around the time that Amos and Andy was being taken off of the television because of the slapstick, and so they couldn't see the beauty in some of the slapstick. So it took me a while, but I found that play. And not only did I find it, but I produced it a number of times too. It's called the Slabtown Convention. Um, and I wrote a poem in the book called The Laundresses, and it's in that tendency of the Slabtown Convention or in the morning, and it says gotta rush it up a bit, Lucy, Frances, Elsie, and Louise. Start ironing right now, and no gossiping, if you please. Girl, I heard tell that Mary Louise just had another set of twins. She surely needs some clothes for those kids and lots of safety pins. Did you hear the solo that Pastor made Mamie sing? Girl, it was awful and all off key and everything. So that same kind of vernacular
Mm.
is in that kind of poem. Now I like poetry, but I don't like all kinds of poetry. I don't like poetry that says, "Here's my poetry. I'm very smart." I like poetry that tells you something, that talks to you about life and something that will help you along the way. Um, and so a lot of the poems are like that. Like my mother might say something like, um, "I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what could be the use of it is more than I can see. It is very, very like me from my heels up to my head, and I see it leap before me when I jump into my bed." And this is from A Child's Garden of Verses. So she was not in tune to just one kind of work. She was in tune to a lot. And the weird thing is, I never thought about her saying these things to me for years until I've grown old. Now I realize that this woman putting something in my mind all the time. When my parents passed away and I had to break down the house, I went into the basement. The place was just full with all my mother's things, my grandmother's things. It was like a nightmare that I had to go through. But she had a box that she had kept of stories that I had written when I was 15 years old, taking creative writing. And so I remember, I don't remember writing the stories. I remember being in the class. There might have been one or two of the stories that I remember, but I have this treasure trove of writings that my mother kept for me. So was she was good at that, and she made me pay attention to certain writers like Robert Louis Stevenson and Shel Silverstein. And that came about as a teacher and reading Where the Sidewalk Ends to the students, um, about a little girl who says she's sick. And she keeps talking about how sick she is. And then she realizes it's Saturday. And then she says, well, I can go out and play now.
Mm.
So there's so much joy if you have to find it though. So, but I'll tell you, one of the greatest writers of all time, everybody knows, is Stephen
Yeah, here.
um, King.
Oh,
He's just a genius. He's just a genius at writing. If you sit and evaluate his work, he's crazy. He writes some crazy stuff, but it's very genius to me. So I like those people. I like the way that they write.
Okay. Are there important statements that you aimed for in this book that you wanted to share through, this literary offering?
There are important statements in there, just like I was saying about the electric slide. That's
Mm,
an important statement because it has to do with people's lives and the joy that they seek for themselves,
mm,
right? But yeah, there's certain statements in there. Like there's a statement in there that reminds me of
mhm,
uh, my mother never told me that babies had to eat all around the clock. So I have a baby, and the poem is called "Wake Up." And at 1 o'clock in the morning, the light comes on, and the nurse is standing at the door, and she's holding this baby. And I'm, well, what in the world is going on with this? And she says, your baby is here. Well, why is the baby here? Well, the baby wants to eat. Well, nobody eats at 1 o'clock in the morning. Your baby does. I had no idea. My mother was not the kind of person that would tell you certain things about life skills. And that was one of that she did not tell me that this baby was going to have to every 2 to 4 hours I have to feed this baby. So that was like a shocker for me. But that's okay. I want to teach. The book is a teaching book in that at the end of the book, if you read a story, or you read a poem, or you read a play, or a skit, you can go to the back of the book and it will give you any kind of information that you need to help you understand what that story was about. For instance, there's a story in there about a woman in the Bible. There are maybe about 200 women in the Bible. Most of them didn't have their names or not there. They're either the daughter of somebody or the wife of somebody else, and so their names are not really there. Well, I took one of the women and gave her a life. She deserved a life, so I gave her a life. And so to do that, I had to research the time period to make sure that I had everything comparable. When you go to the back of the book, it tells you how that happened, why that certain things happened. And in this particular book, it's not about one group of people. It's about a number. There's a story about a Japanese woman who's sitting by the pond. She's contemplating what happened during World War II when the bomb dropped. Where did that story come from? I have no idea. I have no idea. But it's something that you can see the truth in it. It's a learning lesson there, you know. But then there are funny things. Like I was trying to do an anniversary dinner for my husband. We had moved into our new house, and I had money, and I got lobster. I'm going to make this really good. We're going to have a really good steak, a baked potato and a salad, and I made a cake. And oh, I had my long stem wine glasses. I had my water glass. The table was beautiful. And then I thought, I need to get some wine. A nice little sparkling wine would be nice. And so I went to the state store. I hate to tell you all of this. I go to the state store and I said to the man, I'd like to, like a nice wine. Is this a nice wine? I see this bottle of peach wine. He said, "Oh yeah, this is good. This is a great wine." And I said, "Okay." and I come and I pour the wine, and everything is just perfect, and he comes in with flowers, you know, everything is just perfect. We're sitting down, and then we toast, and then after we toast, he tastes the wine and he says, "Well, what kind of wine is this?" And I'm going to leave you right there. I'm going to leave you right there.
Yeah, very much you.
I will leave you in places. I will do that.
All right, my last question is there another book in the works?
Yes, unfortunately, there is. Um, well, it's a funny thing. Like I told you, I'm not like, I'm kind of like, have you ever heard of Octavia Butler?
Yes.
Okay. Octavia Butler is a science fiction writer. She died, I think she fell and hit her head or something, and she was 50 years old. Fantastic, fantastic writer. She wrote this book called Kindred, and I couldn't put it down. And every time, everybody I gave it to couldn't put this book down. Her writing is so good. They tried to make a television show about this book, and it was awful. It was not good. And I felt so badly because it didn't do her justice. And I'm hoping that eventually somebody will do something to do her justice. And I say that because even though I'm in the process of writing another book, I'm in the process of writing more than one book. Um, one book is from my mother saving those stories from me, and so it's a fable, and it's being illustrated by my granddaughter who graduated from the Maryland Institute College of Art. So that's probably going to be the next thing through. And yes, I do have another book of short stories and poems and things of that sort in my head that's ready to roll. And but see, being a jack of a bunch of trades and I said, and not the master of none, you always your mind is like constant. My mind is constantly going.
Mhm.
No matter what else is happening in my life, it seems that these stories keep coming. They keep coming, and it's not anything that I can spick it. I seem like I can turn off. I can't seem to turn it off. Octavia Butler started writing. It seems like she just kept writing. Once she wrote that story Kindred, and it took hold. It's hard, and it's hard to get a publisher. I think it was Terry McMillan was talking about how she could not get an agent. She couldn't get a publisher until she wrote that first book, and that book took off, and then she didn't have any problems after that. But it's difficult, and it's expensive too. Uh, If you think that you're going to go out here, maybe you can go to some publishers and they can do it for a certain amount. But if you want to get top of the line, you're going to pay top of the line to get things done, at least initially. So I say that to all writers, don't feel upset if you're rejected, because I know a friend of mine, we used to send stories into different magazines to try to get them in. I tell my students all the time, it took me 3 years to get accepted in the Jenkintown Festival of the Arts, and then I won third place in painting and had the painting hung in Bloomingdale's and got independent shows. But rejection is you're going to get rejected. Just because you think that you're good at something doesn't necessarily mean that other people are going to think that way. So I cannot. That little girl said, she said, I cannot go to school today. The little Peggy Ann McKay. I have the measles in a month, a gash, a rash, and purple bumps. He was trying to get a point across. I can't do this. I'm sick and I'm not going to. But then they said, but yeah, you say it's Saturday. Oh, I'm going out and play. So there are times to me each piece has a statement. Each character could be you. I'm hoping that as you read the book, whether you're a male or a female, that you begin to see yourself as one of the characters in the stories. There's important stories in here. There's some very important stories in here. There are some things in there that people don't know anything at all about. And I've tried to mix them in so that you can have some laughs, you can have some thoughts, and you can be a little skeptical about some things. But at least it was really funny. Two ladies came over to buy the book from me, and they sat down on the sofa and they started reading, and then they started having a book discussion. And I'm sitting there watching, and I'm thinking, isn't that wonderful? My daughter-in-law was in the car, and she was sitting in the back of the car, and she was reading one of the stories, and then all of a sudden she said, "Oh my goodness!" And I said, "Uh-huh, I got you."
And that you have, um, I have started reading myself, and I'm already intrigued. Um, but and I'll have to talk to you offline about my questions. But we want to make sure everybody, or at least a few people, are able to get their questions in. We have just a few minutes, so I think we can get 3 questions. If you have a question, please put it in the chat, and
We
Sherry Burton Stein will share those questions with us. Sherry,
I
is there one?
Yes, there is one. The first question is, how did you come up with the photo on the cover of the book? And was that photo your first choice?
Mm.
Well, the way it worked is with my publisher. Um, the design department asked me to send them a copy of 10 um, books that I like the covers of, right? And then he said, now tell me, give me about 5 or 6 things that are in your book that you want to bring out. And then he said, now tell me, what do you want on your cover? And I specifically knew exactly what I wanted. I said, I want a woman, and I would like for her to have a veil over her face, right? But I'd like it to be flowing. And he came back, and that's what he came back with. And I was perfectly satisfied with it. Now, some people look at it and they think it's kind of spooky. I heard somebody say, that is kind of spooky. But I want it to be because there are some things that are in there that are kind of spooky. And they're kind of like, oh, that happened. Oh my goodness. You know. And I want it to be somewhat mysterious. Because if you notice, like I broke down the table of contents into different speaking groups, relatively speaking, poetically speaking, historically speaking, theatrically speaking, and personally speaking. And those personal, a lot of the stories that are in there are historically fiction. They have truthful backgrounds. I hope that answered that question.
Okay.
All right. So the next question for Dr. Wilson is, how long did it take you to write this book?
It took me 3 years to write that book.
Mm.
Yeah, it took 3 years to write it. It took 3 years to write it, and then it took uh, maybe about 6 months to edit it. Right? It took a whole year to get it published. So we're talking 4 years.
Wow. I didn't know it took that long. Because it took about the same for mine, but it seemed like you just like whipped that out. I'm sorry. But but I didn't know that you had been working on it, so that's interesting.
Sharon, do you want to ask the question that you put in the chat?
Oh, and I think that is Kim, matter of fact,
Oh, has
that
your
put that in now that can you read that, Sherry? 'Cause I
yes,
can't get to.
why the play on mythology of the word? Why the
Oh, it's
play on
called,
yeah,
yes, okay. It's called a mythology.
Mythology. Okay,
Right.
that's something
That's
I
why I
need.
put the period there,
my
because it's an anthology. An anthology is usually a conglomeration of people's writings, right? This is a conglomeration of my writings. And so I called it a mythology. This is a word that I created.
Okay.
and
I personally thought it was interesting. That drew me too because I'm like, wow, that's an interesting, I picked up on the my, but I always think myth and I was like, wow. But that does kind of it had me curious as well. So, great question.
Yeah, I'm
I
glad
have
somebody used
one more question. How did you find a publisher?
it. I found a publisher. I was looking all over. I found a publisher because of one of the male students in one of the writing classes that I was in. He had had 5 or 6 books published, and he had used this particular publishing company for the last 3 books that he had published, and he was very satisfied with them. And so he told me about it, uh, and I said, okay, I'm tired of looking now, and I'm gonna run with this company. And that's how I found them. And that's why I said it's good when you get into these different classes with different people who have had different experiences, that they can help you also. The one thing that I like about the, Susan's classes is that we can sit and we can talk about what is good about their writings and what needs to improvement, and it's done in such a way that nobody's feelings are hurt.
Okay. Any other questions, Sherry?
Just one more. How did you find your writing class?
It was just, it wasn't anything that I did that I thought was smart. I just went uh, uh, to the senior citizens um, organization, which is run out of the Anne Arundel Community College, and signed up. And my thought is, if it's good, I will hang with it. If I don't think it's going to do anything for me, or I can't do anything for anybody else, then I don't have to take this. So I've and once COVID hit, everything became virtual, and it made it easy. I didn't have to go out for any of the classes. I did all of the classes right here as I do now. And just because I have a book published doesn't mean that I'm going to stop taking the classes, because I find that they're valuable to me, and as long as they're valuable to me, and I also feel like I can help somebody else along the way too, and that's what I will do.
Okay. And Dr. Wilson, did you want to take 2 more questions?
Yes, we have time. Yeah, it's
Okay,
54. We
just two
have time.
more. One question is about your artwork. Do you consider your artwork an inspiration for a story or a poem, or vice versa? I like that question.
They either way, in the book, some of my paintings are in the book. Um, I didn't paint them intentionally for the stories, or write the stories intentionally for them. They just happened. it's strange to say that, but it was not a plan. Like, for instance, I danced to the beat of my own drum. So I had painted a picture of different instruments around the world, and one of them was a drum. So they just kind of happened together. And so the one thing is that I'm sorry I didn't do is make sure that the paintings were done in color in the book. They're in black and white, but you could still see that they're, what they are. But no, I didn't write a story and then paint a picture to go with the story. Or I didn't paint the picture and then write the story to go with it. They just coincided somehow. Fate.
Okay. And the last question of the evening is, what encouraging words would you recommend to encourage young writers?
Um, you know, everybody has a gift. And I always say this to people. If you really want to be a writer, work at it. Don't think that it's just going to something that's just going to happen for you. You have to work. You got to work. And so, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an artist, if you want to be a teacher, whatever, you got to work at it. You know, um, I didn't want to write a book. Look at this. Look at this. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see this?
No, I can't
Well,
see.
you don't want to see it. This is my dissertation. And I'm telling you, when I finish writing this dissertation, you can see a little bit now. I didn't want to write another thing. I didn't want to write creatively. I didn't want to write academically. I didn't ever think that I would ever write anything else ever again. Um, but look what happened. Years later, I wrote a book. So I would tell them to try and see, but put your best effort out there for it. And I always tell people, sometimes people want to sing, but they're tone deaf. So sing in the shower. sing sing to yourself, sing to your children, but find something else that everybody has some kind of gift. You just have to find out what it is and work with it. And if it's writing, then keep working at it, and it will happen for you. But don't be upset because you are rejected. Rejection. One of my grandchildren asked me the other day about what do I think about mistakes, and I said mistakes are good. Suppose everything was perfect. At least you learn from mistakes. When you make a mistake, you learn from it. So give it a try.
Well, I think that's the perfect place to end this evening. I wish we could go on and on and on because, as you know, Dr. Wilson really has so much to say, and she's such an inspiration to so many of us. I mean, when I saw the numbers jump as far as who was registering for this, and it actually matches the numbers. I mean, people did not want to miss this. And it's been a joy to see all the people that are here and their connections to her. And for those of you who don't know me or my sister, we are cousins of Dr. Wilson. And our father, Howard Burton, was very close to Sandra's mom. And so one of the beauty, if there was anything beautiful about COVID, there was some interesting interactions that happened, and we found each other virtually through Alpha Kappa Alpha, where my sister Sherry Burton Steine and I are also members, and we we found her through that vehicle, that organization. And so, yeah, we consider her one of our besties and a true inspiration for our artistic and creative endeavors. So it's been a honor and a pleasure for both of us to co-host this um, with you, Dr. Wilson. And it's also an honor to see so many people that love her and are inspired by her to join her today. We are, as I mentioned, we are taping this. We'll make sure that Dr. Wilson gets this out to all of you, and especially those that joined late. But encourage you to visit her website for future more events, and also to learn more about the book. And that's drsandrawilson.com. And you'll find a lot of information about the book, some of the reviews, and also links to where you can purchase it. Thank you, Dr. Wilson, for entrusting Sherry and I with this. we
Thank
we do
you.
appreciate it, and we really wish you the best with the book. And thank you for letting us share this with all your friends and colleagues.
Thanks and love to everyone who came on tonight. Greatly appreciate your being here for me and hope you enjoy the book.
Yes, and if you haven't got it, get it. It's definitely a page turner. And I think you'll find a lot. I think, and as Dr. Wilson mentioned, you'll find a lot about yourself, and if nothing else, challenges to how you view things, because there's always a different side of things that we may not expect or think about in a lot of different situations. So I'm going to stop the recording here.